Hi everyone, hope you had a great weekend. Just wanted to go over a little bit from week two and kind of intro to week three and talk a little bit about some of the quiz questions. So one thing that I just want to kind of call to everyone's attention is the group assignment. One thing about that may look a little wanky in your grade books until I get it corrected is that for some reason it was set up as a group assignment, but it didn't accept the groups that were there. So normally when if it's set up as a group assignment and someone from your group makes a submission, that submission appears across everyone's grade books. For whatever reason, this didn't work, but I did go in and see, and at least one person from each group submitted the assignment, so no worries there. It's just a matter of me making some adjustments on the back end of the classroom. So don't worry, it looks like I have everyone's assignment. However, I did not go in this morning to check and see if I got everyone's self and peer assessment. I cannot grade a group's project until I have everyone's self and peer assessment. So please make sure that you get that submitted. You'll download this form, you'll fill it out, and then you'll re-upload it to this Dropbox. This is not set up as a group assignment, so everyone will be submitting that individually, and I do need everybody's assessments before I move forward to grade a group's assignment. I do want to just make a general comment about group assignments, though. I know that a lot of people don't like group assignments. I myself am a recent student. I completed my doctorate a few years back, and in the coursework portion of that doctorate, I did do some online coursework. I know what a pain it is to take part in a group when you are in disparate locations. For example, I did my doctorate at Creighton, which is in Omaha, Nebraska, and there were students everywhere from from New York, which is where I was, to Omaha, to Hawaii. There were students in my class that were deployed overseas. So, it is difficult to make a group work. But that's the reason that we do group work, is that especially in healthcare, but across any business, you need to be able to be part of a team. You need to be able to function as part of a team and do that effectively. Even when there are people in the group that you have, a personality conflict with, or a difference of opinion on something, or just that your schedules don't line up. So it's crucial that you are able to overcome these things within the group setting. But a few points. Number one, keep in mind that this is an online class. A lot of students, I know that there are some of you that are full-time students, so you focus on your schoolwork during the week. And that's, so the weekends tend to be yours, or maybe to spend some time studying for other classes, etc. Keep in mind that this is an online class, meaning that it's a mix of traditional students as well as, I apologize, my cat is coming to visit, a mix of online students as well as, that are in the fully online program, as well as students that are in the on-ground sections, or in the on-ground setting full time. Students that are in the fully online program tend to do their work on weekends, because most of them work full time. So I will say, if you, for example, if you have the inability to take part in work over a weekend when it's a group assignment, get that right out there early on. Hey, I'm sorry, I'm going away this weekend, or I have, a major project for something else that I'm working on. I really would like to get things wrapped up by Friday, etc. On the flip side, if you are one of those folks that really doesn't have a lot of time during the week to dedicate to work, but typically works on the weekend, get that out there right away. You need to participate in the class throughout the week. That's part of, being part of the discussions, etc. Taking a few moments to respond to emails or be involved with other students in the class during the week is simply part of taking an online class. So although you may save your weekends to write papers or do major activities, when it's a group assignment, we all need to compromise a little bit and work together to make sure that that can happen. And the best way to set that up for success is right at the beginning of the week, lay out what your parameters are. Like, look, hey, I am not available this weekend, or I only have a couple hours to dedicate during the week, etc. So just really important to communicate. If people know what to expect, there may be a lot less displeasure throughout the group. The other thing I would say is that make sure that you're treating this as if you were sitting in a classroom or sitting in a room together doing a group assignment. We need to use a certain amount of, and we talk about this in the syllabus and in the classroom, but we need to always need to use a certain amount of netiquette, meaning that just because we're online and we're not sitting face to face, we can't use that as an excuse to treat other people badly. So make sure that that you're working together just as if you would be if you were assigned to a team in a workplace. We can't treat people badly in the workplace. We can't treat people badly in the classroom. So it's really important that everyone take care when communicating. Sometimes communications in the email world or in the text world or even in discussions can come off rude or inappropriate when maybe that wasn't the intention. So just be careful about your communications in general. That'll be helpful to you here now, but it'll be incredibly helpful to you in the workplace because there's so many times when you type out an email, you hit send, and you're like, oh, geez, I didn't mean for it to sound that way. It's always better to take a second look at something before you send it, just to make sure it sounds appropriate and that you're not discounting other people's opinions or treating people badly. So that's I'll just put that out there for everyone to consider. It is a group assignment. It's meant to be done as a group, and it's not simply so there are less papers to grade. It's truly so that you can get used to working in a group effectively with conflicts and differences and all of that good stuff. So just a little kind of primer on the group work side of things. So let's take a look at the quiz. A couple questions that folks got wrong on the quiz. So first question is, several states have modified the collateral source rule in order to what? And the correct answer is to limit the damages payable to a plaintiff. So what the collateral source rule says, the rule itself says that in a proceeding, a tort proceeding, you cannot look at monies due from other aspects of the case. You can't look at that to make a determination on damages. So, for example, if maybe there's a patient had an injury that was caused by a physician, but for some reason that patient's medical insurance is going to make payment on that, on some of the medical bills associated with that. So money coming in from insurance, or even if it's maybe they've sued an insurance company is going to make payment on it due to some negligence, etc. What the collateral source rule says is that when the court is looking at a tort claim, so a negligence claim, some other type of tort claim, they cannot look at what outside agencies are making payment on. So if maybe the plaintiff is looking for $20 million in damages, including medical costs, but they're getting $1 million from the insurance company in medical costs. Collateral source rule says it doesn't matter who's paying from the outside. It only matters what the court is looking at. Some states, in the effort of reform, in the effort of tort reform, have modified that collateral source rule so that the court can look at that external information, look at what things are being paid by other agencies or entities, and limit the damages that are available to be paid to the plaintiff. So that's what the collateral source rule is, and that's one aspect of tort reform that is moving forward. Next one, A or an, depending on the answer, is the intentional touching of another's person in a socially impermissible manner without that person's consent. So oftentimes battery, which is the correct answer, and assault get confused. So assault is, I'll give the example that I give in the classroom. It usually gets a chuckle. So assault is when somebody threatens another of violence of some sort, impermissible touching. So there's a threat, and that threat is connected to the person's ability to carry out that threat. So, for example, if I were, and I think most of you know Dr. Hampy, she's the head of our program, she's right across the hall from me. So if I were to walk into Dr. Hampy's office and say, hey, Dr. Hampy, I'm going to punch you in the nose, that would be considered assault. I never touched her, but I have threatened her, and I have the ability to carry out that threat. I could punch her in the nose. I have that, I am, a person of normal size that, would have, that has functional arm, is able to do that. But on the flip side, let's say sometimes we have little ones in the office that are children of students or children of faculty, children of staff. So let's say one of the little ones walks into Dr. Hampy's office, a 3-year-old, little 3-year-old girl, walks into Dr. Hampy's office and says, Dr. Hampy, I'm going to punch you in the nose. Well, it's the same threat, but a 3-year-old is not likely to be able to carry out that threat, I guess, unless, Dr. Hampy was sitting on the floor or something, but it's unlikely that that little one is going to be able to carry out that threat. So it's incredibly bad behavior, but it's not assault because there is no ability to carry that out by that person that threatened, in this case, Dr. Hampy. Now, battery is not, it's oftentimes associated with assault, but it's not always associated with assault. So if I just walked into Dr. Hampy's office and punched her in the nose, then that would be battery. I don't have to walk in and tell her I'm going to do it. If I just were to go in and punch her in the nose, that would be battery. I would be guilty of battery. If I came into her office and said, I'm going to punch you in the nose, and then punched her, that would be assault and battery. Oftentimes that's what you get, is that combination of the two. So hopefully that clears it up a little bit. Battery is actually hitting. Think about when something is battered. If something is battered, that means it's beaten up, it's punched up a little bit. So battery comes from that. Actually, battered comes from that term, battery. Whereas assault, I don't have to lay my hands on anyone, but if I make a viable threat against someone, then that could be considered assault. So important to remember the difference between the two. Okay, so sorry about that minor blip here on my computer. I should add that I would obviously never punch Dr. Hampy in the nose. I don't think I said that before I stopped the recording, but so obviously that would never happen. So the next question is, blank is the performance of an unlawful or improper act. So the correct answer here is malfeasance. So malfeasance is what this says, performance of something, acting in some way that is unlawful or improper. Now, one thing that might help you to remember, mal means bad in French. So, and it's, kind of comes from the Romance language land. So that's how mal has ended up here. If you are performing malfeasance, you are a bad actor, meaning that you're doing something that's unlawful or improper. Misfeasance is slightly different. So misfeasance means that you're doing something that might be lawful, but you're doing it wrong. So performing surgery in an improper manner, wrong site surgery, or performing surgery on the on a healthy person, something like that. So malfeasance is bad, straight up doing something that's unlawful. So an example there might be a third trimester abortion in a state where that's illegal. There are late term abortions that are legal in some states, but in the majority of states they are illegal. So that would be malfeasance if you did that. That's illegal. You can't do that. It would be considered malfeasance. Misfeasance would be going in to take out someone's diseased kidney and accidentally taking out their healthy one. That would be misfeasance. Nonfeasance is focused on this non. So miss, you kind of missed what you were supposed to do, I guess might be a good way to remember that. Nonfeasance means that something was omitted. You didn't do something that you should have done. So nonfeasance might be a situation where a patient needed lab work or needed treatment and you totally did not do that. So these are all elements that can come into play with negligence claims. Malpractice is typically when people don't answer malfeasance, they answer malpractice. Malpractice is not, oops, sorry, hit the button. Malpractice could be something that's unlawful or improper, but it's not only that. It can also be, malpractice could be made up of malfeasance, misfeasance, or nonfeasance, or some combination of the three. Malpractice simply means negligence by a professional person. So when a doctor is, performs an illegal surgical procedure, when a doctor operates on the wrong site, when a doctor neglects to provide appropriate treatment, all of that can be considered malpractice. It's simply negligence, but completed by a professional person. Last week, we talked about political malpractice. So, same thing, negligence, but by the political realm. So, by the government or by a government agent. So, a politician, someone that works in the high level of the government, that's political malpractice. This week, we're talking about straight up malpractice. So malpractice just means any professional person. There's malpractice in the legal world. There's obviously malpractice in the medical world. There's malpractice in politics. There's malpractice in higher ed. Anytime that someone that is in a professional role that's trained and educated to be in that role and they are negligent in their actions, that can be considered malpractice. So that's it for the quiz. Let's flip back over the classroom here quick. So in week 3 in our class, I'm in the wrong class, sorry. I flipped over to the on-ground class and still there. So for week 3 for our class, we are going to be looking at HIPAA. So you might think, why are we singling out an individual law to look at? Well, HIPAA is pretty important. Most of us, when we think about HIPAA, we think about privacy, keeping people's information private, but it's much more broad than that. There are security regulations. There are regulations that govern just out of the administrative, simplification of HIPAA. There are regulations that govern what code sets we submit to insurance companies. There are regulations that govern patient identifiers. Well, there are, but that never went through. Identifiers for providers, specific individual identifiers. There are just a multitude of things that are part of HIPAA. We are going to be focusing on privacy and security because I think that impacts the majority of people that will work in the healthcare setting. So we've got some documentation for you to review, but there are also a couple of videos, and then also a few articles about data breaches, just so you can get an idea of the problem, the breadth of the problem that we have in the industry. We will be in the written discussion board this week, so make sure that you cite sources appropriately if you're in the written discussion board. But after reading these articles up here about data breaches, what I want you to do is go out and grab a HIPAA, some sort of a HIPAA breach. It could be a data breach, it could be a privacy breach, but some sort of privacy or security breach to share with the class. So, talk about the what was the violation, what were the consequences if they've been decided, share the information about the case itself so we're able to find that. And then when you're responding to your classmates, think about, in your response, think about the types of things that an organization could have done to avoid that situation, or what they might be able to do to avoid situations in the future. So that is our discussion for this week. We do have a written assignment this week. This is, it's just simply a kind of a case study of different fact scenarios. And what I want you to do is kind of work your way through the scenario. And as the information changes from fact to fact, discuss how, where you think a privacy breach or security breach may or may not have occurred during that situation. You can just write, it doesn't necessarily need to be a big fancy APA formatted paper. You can just kind of write it out as a essay format or whatever. Just list out the facts and how you think things have changed. I'm not looking for a big fancy thing. However, I am looking for 2 to 3 pages worth. So there are a lot of things that occurred here. So make sure that you are discussing fully each of the elements. And then also, if you are using external resources, maybe you're using our privacy security guide or any external resources that you might be using, please make sure they're cited properly and that there's a reference list at the end. Even if it's not a big formal APA formatted paper, we always need to cite our sources properly, both in text next to whatever you're sharing from an external source, and then in a reference list at the end of the paper. And then we have a quiz and the Edpuzzle. So hopefully you enjoyed learning about HIPAA this week. I'd be willing to bet that the majority of you have some knowledge of it, just from being a patient or maybe working in a healthcare facility, but we'll dig into it in a little more depth. So look forward to seeing everyone in the discussions, and have a great week. Thanks.